the birth of the atomic bomb and the man who created it. That's what we'll be discussing in this video. In this video, we're going to recap Oppenheimer. We're going to discuss the birth of the atomic bomb and the man who created it, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Before we start, let's take a look at the cast. First up, Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt as Kitty Oppenheimer, Matt Damon as Leslie Groves, Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, Florence Pugh as Jean Tatlock, Josh Hartnett as Ernest Lawrence, Casey Affleck as Boris Posh, Dane DeHaan as Kenneth Nichols, David Dastmalchian as Benny Safdie as Edward Cheller, Michael Angarano as Robert Serber, Jack Quaid as Richard Feynman, Jason Clarke as Arthur Compton, Gustav Skarsgård as Werner Heisenberg, and Rami Malek as David Hill. The movie is directed by Christopher Nolan, and it was written by Christopher Nolan and written by Jonathan Nolan and based on the book American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and Martin J. Let's start the movie now. During World War II, the United States, Great Britain and Canada are pursuing an atomic bomb. Now, we need to go back to the beginning of the story. In 1939, the United States, Great Britain and Canada are pursuing an atomic bomb. J. Robert Oppenheimer is a theoretical physicist in Princeton, New Jersey. He attends a meeting led by Lyman Briggs, chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. They're talking about nuclear fission. Oppenheimer says that the idea is not feasible. You can't get more than 1 or 2 neutrons out of uranium. Briggs leaves the room. Oppenheimer follows him and convinces him otherwise. Soon, the U.S. government is convinced that it should develop the atomic bomb before Germany. In June 1942, General Leslie Groves is put in charge of the Manhattan Project. He needs a scientist to run the project. He meets with Vannevar Bush, head of the National Defense Research Committee. Bush recommends Oppenheimer. Groves travels to Princeton to meet with him, but Oppenheimer refuses to work on the bomb because he believes it won't work. Eventually, he's persuaded to accept the job. So, Groves hires Oppenheimer to lead the Los Alamos National Laboratory. He moves to New Mexico and brings along his wife, Kitty. He starts assembling a team of scientists to help him develop the bomb. One of them is Edward Teller, a Hungarian physicist. Together with Enrico Fermi, they built the world's first nuclear reactor. Another one is Ernest Lawrence, who invented the cyclotron. He uses it to turn uranium into plutonium. Robert Serber is also part of the group. He explains how the bomb works to the new recruits. It consists of 6 pounds of 90% enriched uranium-235. When it's released, a chain reaction occurs. The neutrons split the uranium atoms, which release additional neutrons, creating a self-sustaining reaction. This will result in an explosion equivalent to 200 million tons of TNT. They call it the gadget. Meanwhile, back in Washington, Louis Strauss is trying to convince the Secretary of War that he should be the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. However, he's rejected. So he goes to the Los Alamos lab to talk to Oppenheimer. He wants him to develop a second bomb, but he refuses. He says that they only have enough material for one. Soon after, Strauss leaves. Oppenheimer learns that he's been appointed to the Atomic Energy Commission. He asks Kitty if she knew about it. She says no. He tells her that he made a mistake by making the bomb. If the Germans had developed it first, it would have been used against them. Now it belongs to all countries. He worries that other nations will start developing their own weapons. Kitty comforts him. Then we see the Trinity test. The scientists stand behind a hill. As they watch, the tower rises up into the sky. Everyone is amazed by the power of the weapon they have created. The next day, President Harry Truman announces to the world that the United States has successfully developed the atomic bomb. After the announcement, Oppenheimer's reputation grows. He becomes famous overnight. He attends a conference in Washington where he meets Louis Strauss. He tells Oppenheimer that the world isn't ready for such power. He warns him to keep the bomb a secret. If the Russians find out about it, it could start a war. Oppenheimer replies that he doesn't make policy. He's just a scientist. Strauss tells him that science and politics cannot be separated. If the scientists don't control the politicians, then the politicians will control the scientists. Just then, General Groves enters the room. He's promoted Oppenheimer to brigadier general. Oppenheimer accepts the honor. He receives letters from the White House inviting him and his wife to attend a party. He tells Kitty that he feels uncomfortable about being famous. She says that people only like him because of what he did. He says that he doesn't want to be known as a celebrity scientist. She replies that he already is. Then they kiss. Oppenheimer drives his car down a deserted road. He runs into a deer and kills it. It reminds him of the destruction caused by the atomic bomb. He throws himself into his work, hoping to find a way to stop its destructive power. He develops a device called the puffer. It uses compressed gas to increase the yield of a thermonuclear bomb. His colleagues are impressed by his genius. They believe that he can save the world. But Strauss is skeptical. He thinks that Oppenheimer is out of his mind. He tells him that the United States needs to strike first if attacked. Oppenheimer argues that the bomb should be banned, but Strauss points out that other countries are also developing it, so the United States shouldn't be left defenseless. Oppenheimer tries to ignore him, but Strauss keeps bothering him. Finally, he snaps and attacks him. Their argument continues until dawn. Oppenheimer wakes up in his office. He looks tired and defeated. He knows that he can't win the argument, so he gives up. Meanwhile, in Russia, Joseph Stalin hears about the atomic bomb. He orders his scientists to develop one too. In Washington, D.C., Oppenheimer is grilled by the Atomic Energy Commission. They ask him why he didn't inform them about his controversial past. They tell him that he's a security risk. Oppenheimer defends himself, saying that he never lied about his political beliefs. However, the commission doesn't buy his explanation. They suspend him from duty. Oppenheimer returns to New Mexico. He feels isolated and useless. Kitty tries to cheer him up, but he's too depressed to listen. He spends most of his time in bed. Kitty leaves him and goes to visit her family. Oppenheimer gets a call from the White House. President Truman invites him to a meeting. He meets with Oppenheimer and other scientists. They discuss how to improve the design of the bomb. Oppenheimer suggests using hydrogen instead of plutonium. Truman agrees. Oppenheimer is reinstated to his position. He leads the development of the H-bomb. One day, he has a nightmare about the Trinity test. He wakes up sweating. Kitty comforts him. She tells him that everything he does has consequences. He says that he wishes he never created the bomb. She replies that it's too late for that. The bomb has changed the world forever. Meanwhile, the Korean War is raging. The United States and its allies are fighting against North Korea. The Russians are supporting North Korea with weapons and ammunition. The US government wants to end the war quickly. They order Oppenheimer to develop a powerful weapon. He invents the hydrogen bomb. The first test is successful. The explosion is bigger than expected. Oppenheimer is pleased with his creation. He believes that it will force both sides to end the war, but Strauss disagrees. He thinks that it will only escalate the conflict. Oppenheimer ignores him and prepares for the second test. He travels to Hawaii and observes the blast from a distance. Once again, the bomb explodes. Oppenheimer is shocked by its power. He realizes that he has created a monster. He understands that the bomb will not bring peace to the world. Instead, it will lead to more war and destruction. He returns to New Mexico. He's devastated by what he has done. Kitty tries to comfort him, but he's too upset to listen. He walks away from her and sits in his office chair. He stares at the wall and reflects on his life's work. Suddenly, he has an epiphany. He understands that he must share the responsibility for the bomb with everyone involved in its development. He calls a meeting with all of his colleagues. Together, they write a letter to the United Nations calling for the control of atomic weapons. The film ends with Oppenheimer giving a speech at a conference in Washington, D.C. He urges world leaders to take action before it's too late. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment below. Also, check out these other video shorts.